It's my pleasure to welcome you to this evening of poetry featuring three distinguished poets, Francisco Alarcon, Lorna Cervantes, and Jose Montoya. My name is Yvonne Yarbro-Bejarano. I'm a professor of Latina and Latino literature and culture in the Department of Iberian and Latin American Cultures and organizer of this event. I would like to take this opportunity to thank the other sponsors: the Dean of Humanities and Sciences for his generous contribution, the Division of Literatures, Cultures, and Languages, the Departments of English and Drama, El Centro Chicano, Feminist Studies, Modern Thought and Literature, American Studies, the Creative Writing Program, and in the Center for Comparative Studies in Race and Ethnicity, Chicana and Chicano, Native American, Asian American, and African American Studies. Thanks to all for making this evening possible. Each one of these prolific poets has a fascinating career, but for me, much of the excitement produced by tonight's event is the opportunity to have them together at the same time to appreciate their commonalities and unique voices. It is a rare treat to be in the presence of these three poets at one time. Aquí en este aula tenemos a Francisco Alarcón, a Lorna Cervantes, a Jose Montoya, y el suelo no se hunde. Thank you for honoring us with your presence and bringing your poetry to us like a blessing. The trajectories of these three stellar poets are rich and varied. Their work arose from the matrix of the civil rights movements of the 1960s and 1970s, and each in their own way has embodied the directives of art activism, developing cultural practices as community organizing. They share this common root, yet in the particulars of biography and poetic voice, they could not be more different from one another. Jose Montoya's multilingual, often humorous vernacular with a keen apprehension of the nature of American life, Lorna D. Cervantes' political passion combining concerns for craft and gendered experience, and Francisco X. Alarcon, the master of the short line form as well as the sonnet, one of the first to explore the poetic resonance of being Chicano and gay. These three poets, with their long and productive careers and distinctive voices, allow us to experience the diversity and richness of Chicana and Chicano cultural production. Together, they have enriched American literary life with their diamantine visions. I will introduce all three now in the order they will read. And I wanted to point out that they've brought books for sale, and they're, of course, willing to sign them. And they'll be available after the reading. Francisco X. Alarcon, raised in Guadalajara and now living in the San Francisco Bay Area. He is the author of 10 volumes of poetry and several books of bilingual poetry for children, and a tireless cultural worker from the 1970s onward. Some of his collections, along with new poems, appear in the book From the Other Side of Night, Del Otro Lado de la Noche, from 2002, which is on the table. His poetry, written in Spanish or English or both, participates in the poetic tradition of the Spanish mystic poets of the 16th century, as well as Mesoamerican indigenous traditions. He is blessed with the gift of language that seems to flow in his poems like water, although we know there's effort involved. It doesn't seem like there is, with images alternately luminous, hard-hitting, tender, and outraged. He has been the recipient of several literary prizes, including the Before Columbus Foundation American Book Award, the Penn Oakland Josephine Miles Award, and the UC Irvine Chicano Literary Prize. He currently teaches at the University of California, Davis, where he directs the Spanish for Native Speakers program. Lorna Cervantes, a fifth-generation Californian of Mexican and Native American Chumash heritage. She has been a pivotal figure throughout the Chicana and Chicano literary movement, notably with Mango, her literary journal and small press that brought many poets into print, including Sandra Cisneros. Her dynamic poetry, at times lucid, at times hermetic, shares kinship with that of Neruda in its engagement with political and natural forces. She hammers words on the anvil of her experience. She plays with words for their suchness and formal properties. She is widely published and has received 2 NEA Poetry Fellowships, a Lila Wallace Reader's Digest Fellowship, and 2 Pushcart Prizes. She is the author of Emplumada from 1981, American Book Award, From the Cables of Genocide, 1991, Patterson Poetry Prize and the Latino Literature Award, and Drive, the First Quartet, from 2006, Pulitzer nominee and winner of the Balcones Poetry Award. A former associate professor of English at the U of Colorado, Boulder, where she directed the creative writing program, she now lives in Pacifica and carries out poetry workshops in San Francisco's Mission District. Don Jose Montoya. Born in the mountains of New Mexico, Montoya was partly raised in Albuquerque and California. It would be impossible to overestimate his influence on Chicana and Chicano poetry, especially for the multilingual music of his verse. He is an artist who spans many disciplines as poet, painter, and screen printer, writer, and musician. He is a founding member of the legendary cultural group, the RCAF, the Rebel Chicano Art Front, later known as the Royal Chicano Air Force, based in Sacramento, and of the musical group Casindio. And yes, you guessed it, there are CDs by Casindio on the table, as well as Jose's book. He is the author of El Sol y Los de Abajo from 1972, which is probably not available anymore. And Information, capital F, 20 Years of Joda, of 1992, and is most widely known for his poem El Luis, a complex and compassionate portrait of a Pachuco fallen on hard times. A pioneer in Chicana and Chicano literature in the use of code switching, including caló or slang combining Spanish and English, Montoya forms part of the American poetic tradition from Whitman to the Beats. He is a professor of art at California State University, Sacramento, and since 2002, he has been Poet Laureate of Sacramento. So we'll get started. Francisco will begin, and then we'll flow from there into the other poets. And everyone will now turn off their cell phones.